Welcome to the Train the Trainer program on risk management, brought to you by the University of Hawaii CTAR, the Western Extension Risk Management Education Center, and USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture. This program today is featuring Keisan Tamura, sorry if I said that wrong, from FSA, and will focus on disaster assistance programs and potentially other FSA programs if we have enough time. And with that, I will now turn it over to Keisan.
So we've got a handful of programs. I mean, majority of what FSA does, it is disaster related. So first one, and the biggest one is like the crop insurance, which is a NAP, non-insured crop disaster assistance program. We call it NAP, NAP for short. But the gist of it is basically it's basically like insurance. I mean, it's not insurance, but it's pretty real similar to it. We have basic coverage levels, which ranges from like 50-55 coverage level up to a 65-100. That means like 50-55 means you get you're covered for 50% of the loss, and you get 55% of the average market price. And that level is free if you're considered socially disadvantaged, beginning farmer, or like a veteran farmer. The 65-100 levels, which stands for 65% is covered, and you get 100% of the national price. That is, we call it the buy-up option. So obviously you have to pay for that. Basically payments, vary. It depends on the yield of the crop and also the national price of the crop, and also depends on the acreage. So I can't give you like an exact dollar amount as to how much it costs, but the variables that affect the price of that coverage, it depends on the yield, the price, and the acres that you're planting. Also, we do have some crops that we don't cover under this program, such as like coffee, macadamia nuts, bananas. So crops like that are not covered under NAP. You'd have to go through like a commercial insurance agency. It's a good program. I mean, like currently right now, I've got about close to 300 applicants. It ranges from my ranchers, to my annually tilled crops like ginger, sweet potato, which is the bulk of our applicants, the ginger and sweet potato, being how sensitive those crops are. And this is the Emergency Conservation Program. Basically, this program comes about when there's like a major disaster. For example, the last time we opened this program was, I want to say Hurricane Lane. I think Hurricane Lane was like the year of 2018, I think. Was it 2018? Something like that. But yeah, if there's like a hurricane, tropical storm, anything, drastic, we can open this program. My county committee will kind of review it and see what areas would be eligible for this program. For example, if a storm only affected the Kona side, and they may just open up the program strictly for the Kona side. But this is a cost share program, so it is currently now it's a 90% cost share program for people who can certify as a socially disadvantaged farmer. Basically, if you're of a race other than white, you're considered socially disadvantaged, and we have a form that you fill out that certifies that. So then it becomes a 90% cost share. Other than that, it is 75% cost share, which is still pretty good. But majority of people in Hawaii, they'll be able to certify as socially disadvantaged, so they'll get the 90% cost share. There's multiple practices that this program involves, such as like debris removal, grading and shaping, restoring permanent fences, and also like conservation structures, such as, if you got like, your irrigation got damaged or your reservoir got damaged, whenever there's something involved with a conservation structure, NRCS jumps in and helps us out, and they basically do like the conservation plans and whatnot for that, and we'll take care of the financials. But very good program, very helpful. Purpose of that program is, like I said, in the event of an emergency, this program is used to kind of help the farmers get back on their feet. It doesn't necessarily make you whole, but what I tell people, if this program becomes available and you're affected by a hurricane or something, and you're eligible for this program, you may not be able to recoup 100%, but it is something. And also, payments are based on, the extent of the damage. So on the extent and the acreage, those are the two factors that we look at when we come up with an approved dollar amount. So yeah, very good program, very helpful. And next one I will jump to is a tree assistance program. I think the last time we had this program was, I think, about a year ago. We opened it up. Mostly people who applied was most of the people in the Kapoho area who got run over by the lava. They pretty much lost everything, right? So their stuff is 10 feet below the lava, whatever fields that they had. So this program right here, the tree assistance program, it's a cost shared program. The cost share isn't really the greatest. It ranges between 50 to 65%, but this program does help you replant your trees. It also helps you prepare the land. It compensates you for the fertilizer, the labor. If you have to hire a contractor for clear the land for the bulldozing and stuff, this program compensates you for that. But again, it's not a big dollar amount. It's only about 50 to 65%. And this program really isn't popular just because the producer needs to suffer at least a 15% mortality loss. So unless a disaster is pretty drastic, most people won't be eligible because of that eligibility requirement, which means you have to suffer a 15% mortality loss. So in this case, when we opened this last program, people who got affected by the lava, they lost everything, 100%. So, super easy for them to qualify. So, we're able to help them out, help them reestablish their land, and put back their trees. Also, we have a whole bunch of trees that you can replant. Like, for example, majority of my people were papaya farmers. They didn't necessarily have to replant with papaya. I have a list of eligible trees that I can find in my handbook. But basically, if you got run over by a papaya, you don't really have to replant with papaya, but most of them do whatever crop that they recently had. But it's a real flexible program to where if you had papaya, you lost your papaya, but you want to plant noni or something else, this program will allow you to do that. Just as long as that tree, that replanted tree, is eligible, is on my list, then it's good to go. But yeah, good program. Not real popular because of that 15% mortality loss eligibility requirement. Next one I will jump to is the Livestock Forage program. So, Hawaii is real, I guess, lucky that this program in specific, the rules kind of pertain to the mainland. So in the mainland, just as long as there's an eligible drought anywhere within the county, the whole county becomes eligible. So, just as majority of the areas that get droughts on this island is Kauai High, Kau, and just as long as they're in a drought, for X amount of time, so if they're D2, D3, or D4 for X amount of time, then basically my national office in DC gets a flag and says, they shoot us an email saying that, hey, your county is eligible, they've been in a drought. So, if you're a rancher in Waimea or in the Waimea area where it's relatively wet and you get good rain, you'll still be eligible for this program. The reason being is because this program is kind of designed based on the mainland style. So if you go to the mainland, it's not like Hawaii where you can drive over Saddle Road from Hilo to Kona and you get super wet and it gets super dry. Also we have our climates vary compared to the mainland. The mainland is, if it's dry, it's dry for miles. So this program really benefits a lot of my ranchers. And actually, we actually just got through taking applications for the 2020 program year. I think we got about 130 applications for this program. But super easy program, just as long as you have control of the land. In other words, if you own the land, great, easy application. If you lease the land, we just need a valid lease. And then all we need is a total cattle count. And basically, that's pretty much it. And we'll call you in to sign the application. And, payment rates are based on per head of cattle. And, it is based on a national factor, a payment factor. So it's not like we come up with these random numbers as to how much we pay you for a wean off or something. But yeah, payments are based on a national payment factor. So you just provide us with your livestock inventory, sign the application, provide us with applicable leases, and basically that's it. The next two programs I'm gonna go over is the livestock indemnity program and the emergency livestock assistance program. I do not have fact sheets for those. I thought I had them, but I don't. But the gist of it, the livestock indemnity program, also known as LIP, short for LIP, basically if your livestock dies from an eligible disaster or an eligible disease, you possibly could get compensated by us. The thing is, it's just that you just have to provide sufficient documentation to prove that your livestock died from whatever you're claiming. And this program doesn't really affect too much in Hawaii because we don't have drastic environments like blizzard storms, stuff like that. In the mainland where they have like a lot of snow, that's where they implement this program a lot. But yeah, just a bit, your cattle dies from an eligible disaster or disease, prove it, we'll pay you for it. Again, payment rates are based on a national payment factor. The other program is a emergency livestock assistance program, so also known as ELAP, ELAP. That program basically has different categories that falls under that program. That program can cover like honeybees, farm-raised fish, and livestock. For the livestock section, basically you can file a loss for like if you have to haul feed, additional feed, or if you have to haul water, you can apply for that program. Again, most times ranchers have a hard time getting past the eligibility requirements, especially if they're hauling water, because you have to be hauling water to a place that, normally doesn't require the hauling of water. Also for like feed loss, if they're filing an application for feed loss, and you have to be in an area where buying additional feed loss is usually not necessary. So again, not really a big popular program, but it is out there. Also, honeybees, we don't have too much farm-raised fish. I think I only have like one farmer who does sturgeon here on this side, but that's about all I know. But we haven't had any application for farm-raised fish, but it's out there. And honeybees, we don't have too much people who've applied in the past, but honeybees basically, if you have honeybees, whether it's used for honey or used for pollinating, those bees are eligible, just as long as they suffered a loss, an eligible loss. They can't just die just because someone set your field on fire or something. It has to be an eligible natural disaster. And I think that's about all I have for disaster programs.
Keisan, this is Stuart. What does it take for a producer to get into this program? Do you have to sign up ahead of time, or they go to you after the disaster, or what's the process?
So the livestock forage program, these programs, first they have to be available. The only programs that are actually readily available and I can take an application almost anytime would be the NAP, the Non-Insured Crop Disaster Assistance. I'm sorry, not that program. TAP, Tree Assistance Program, and the LIP and ELAP. So basically, whenever a disaster occurs, those three programs are pretty much open. The NAP, the Non-Insured Crop Disaster Assistance Program, what we call it, it's like insurance. That has a deadline. So, if you wanted to sign up for 2021, this program, it's too late. You have to have signed up by December 31st of 2020. So for the insurance one, if you want to sign up, you have to sign up the year prior to where you're seeking coverage. So if you're going to sign up for 2022, then you need to put in an application with us by the end of this year. The emergency conservation program, that program only becomes available, when, big disasters occur. So when I'm talking big disasters, I'm talking like tropical storms, hurricanes, crazy flooding, things like that. If it becomes available, we'll open it up and people can either contact us and then we'll shoot out a newsletter. It's like a government newsletter, farmers.gov newsletter. So it'll go out to everyone who we have in our system. And basically, it'll just say this program is available. You can apply, put an application by whatever deadline we create. This livestock forage program is basically there has to be a drought. And the drought, so if you look on here on this fact sheet, like for example, if we're in a D2, it needs to be, the drought needs to be in that level for 8 consecutive weeks. So if a drought, like let's just say, I don't know, Ka'u is in a D2 drought for 8 consecutive weeks, I get an automatic email from DC saying, hey, your county is eligible for livestock forage program. You can start taking applications as whatever date that they give me. Also, a farmers.gov bulletin will automatically go out to everyone who's in our system. The easiest way, if people want to apply or inquire about these programs, if they, if a disaster occurred and, they just don't know what program suits them, easiest way is they can just call my office and, my staff can just tell them like, whether this program is good for you or whether you're eligible for this program, you're not eligible and whatnot. But it's as simple as just contacting our office, getting an application in and, providing us with the required documents.
Keisan, who makes that declaration or determination for the drought? Which agency or I'm not sure.
Basically, it's from the National Drought Monitor. So I keep in contact with Kevin Kodama. He's the one that I would think that he's the one that sends his recommendations to either increase the drought level or decrease the drought level. He stays in contact with me. So usually after every other month, my county committee gets together. We'll talk about it. I have 3 county committee members, each representing their own district. So like the Kona side, Ka'u and Volcano side, and I got another county committee member who represents the Hamakua side all the way up to Kohala. But when we get together on our meetings, we talk about the weather. My county committee's members, they are farmers and ranchers of the community, so they keep in touch with the community as well. And they'll basically report to me like, Havi's been dry. They've reported only like 2 inches of rain in the past 4 weeks or something like that. And basically whatever they pass on to me, I'll forward it over to Kevin. Either that or Kevin usually reaches out to me like every other month or so. But I'll forward that information over to him and, he does his thing.
Keisan, this is James Keach. I'm one of the ornamental extension agents. I saw with the NAP that it specifically listed floriculture crops. Do you know if all of the programs kind of related to crops that aren't livestock that you mentioned also include floriculture, or is it mostly the NAP?
Oh yeah, sorry. I forgot to include the flower people. But yeah, floriculture is an eligible crop. If you are, someone who commercially farms and raises flowers, you are eligible because a lot of the requirements, obviously like not for a livestock forage program because it pertains to cattle and stuff like that, but for programs like the Emergency Conservation Program and the NAP, the definition in there is a producer needs to be an eligible commercial farmer. Floriculture is an eligible commodity.
Awesome, thank you. And I didn't have a chance to look. Do you know if landscape crops are also considered as part of that, or if they're eligible?
You're talking about like ornamental crops, like
yeah, like growing for like sometimes it's like growing things for hedges, but also things like turf.
No, those are not.
Okay.
Yeah, and we consider that ornamental, so and that's why it's not eligible.
I have a question about the tree assistance program.
Mm-hmm.
I had a grower here recently who had an incident. It's not a weather-related natural disaster, but some cattle came from his neighbor's ranch and ate a bunch of his young trees. And I was wondering if a loss like that might be covered under the TAP program or under one of your other programs.
The answer is no. I mean, I did say it has to be from a natural disaster. I know cattle is like, I guess nature. So, but unfortunately, that's not an eligible disaster event. Another good example would be like for my sweet potato and ginger people who have NAP, the crop insurance. Their crop has to be affected by a natural disaster. A lot of times they come back to us, they tell us, hey, the feral pigs got through my parcel, dug up everything. I lost a lot of crop. Unfortunately, that's not eligible. When we talk about natural disaster, talk about like hurricanes, flooding, drought, things like that.
Okay, thank you.
What is FSA's definition of a dead tree during a natural disaster?
What do you mean? Like, are you trying to
yeah,
like,
so like
compare it to like a program or?
Yeah, so like let's say you get strong winds that knock the tree down, but it's not a dead tree, but it's not a standing tree either. Is
Okay,
that
so
considered tree mortality?
okay, so that right there, so the tree assistance program, there's two variables that program looks at. Is one for the death of the tree and the damage of the tree. So we look at two things like that. So for your example, you're telling me that the tree fell down, but it's not dead, and if that's what the producer tells us, then we consider it damage. So it falls under the damage category, I guess you can say. And we do have payment factors for like damage versus death. There's two different payment factors for that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sort of. I guess it's most farmers probably would not be trying to prop up like a MacNut tree, even though it's fallen over. So you're looking at complete loss of that tree eventually, even though it's not dead, and losses for future crop as well.
Right. So the easiest way, I guess, to put it together is, say you have 1 acre of trees, however much trees you have in that acre, if it suffered a 15% mortality loss based on whatever other eligibility requirements we have in there, then you're eligible.
Okay, thank you.
What sort of records are needed for the different programs in terms of like being able to qualify for it? And like, because it sounds like some of them would potentially be easier to qualify for in terms of like proof of.
Yeah.
Like,
so each program, we have our basic, what we call eligibility requirements. It's mandatory documents that we require for pretty much all of our programs. One of them is a highly erodible land determination form. Like if you're planting on highly erodible land and your land is deemed highly erodible by NRCS, then that pretty much kicks you out of the program. Another one is like my adjusted gross income form. Basically if your AGI is more than $900,000, then you don't qualify because you obviously make enough money to kind of help yourself. Those are like the basic documents that I need for pretty much all of my programs. Additional eligibility documents differ between programs. Like for example, Livestock Forage program, the biggest obstacle is land leases. In Hawaii, a lot of people are they do land leases by verbal agreements. Unfortunately, FSA, we're a government agency. We can't take that. We need something on paper. Same with all of my other programs, like the insurance program, emergency conservation program. Basically, you need to show us that you have control of the land on paper, on hard copy. And a lot of times that's like the biggest obstacle that my applicants go through. Other than that, they pretty much have everything that we need. I mean, if they have production records, actually most time they do have production records. For a program for like NAP, we'll need stuff like that. And yeah, like the hardest document that a lot of people have getting to me is their lease documents.
okay, thanks. Okay.
If there aren't any questions, right? Sorry, James, did you want to ask another question?
Oh no, I'm good. I
Oh,
was
okay.
just gonna thank. This is great.
Okay. But thank you very much, Keisan. We appreciate your time to join us and do this presentation. Again, we want to acknowledge our funding agencies, the Western Extension Risk Management Education Center, USDA, as well as UHC-TAR. And again, just a reminder for those participating, please help us fill out the evaluation form. It'll be sent via email. And the resources are being posted on the Train the Trainer website, as well as the recorded videos. As soon as Shannon is done going through them and getting them up on YouTube, we get the link also up there. So please visit the Train the Trainer website if you've missed any of the past ones as well to watch that video. Next week, we have production record keeping, and Stuart is going to be the presenter for next Thursday. So we look forward to seeing you all again lunchtime next Thursday. Thank you very much.